encourage you to join me now in taking your copy of God's Word, God's perfect and inerrant Word. We'll turn together back to the book of Acts for our passage for this morning and throughout our week, Acts 7, verses 54 through 60. So Acts chapter 7, verses 54 through 60. As you can tell as you turn there, this passage is a lot shorter than the one last Lord's Day. But if you're familiar with the biblical story of Stephen, then this is probably the part you are most familiar with, and that's the telling of his martyrdom. Stephen is known as the first martyr of the church. It means he was the first Christian in the early church to die for the Christian faith, persecuted by the enemies of God and killed for being a Christian and for doing Christian things. I want us to think for a moment about what we have read so far about Luke describing Stephen. It's been a very simple description of him. He says simply that Stephen was a faithful Christian man. He was one of the first deacons in the early church. He would go to the temple to share and teach the gospel and was engaged in gospel ministry. It's a very simple description of who Jesus is. And Luke isn't saying that Stephen was a perfect man. We're going to talk more about this here in a few moments. Stephen wasn't perfect. He was just faithful. He loved Jesus because he knew Jesus first loved him. He followed Jesus because he trusted that Jesus is the good shepherd. Really, all Luke is doing is describing normal, ordinary, biblical Christianity. I think in our day and age, we've watched the corrosion of the faith and the connection of faith, the adherence to the faith, the faithfulness to faith erode down to such a point that we read somebody like Stephen and we go, wow, he's a superstar.